Pasco Board of County Commission 10 o'clock meeting of August 8th, 2023. At this time, silence all electronic devices and mute your phones. Prior to proceeding, I would like to take a moment to recognize a valued member of our libraries team who we tragically lost over the weekend. Our thoughts and our prayers are with her family, and her fellow team members during the difficult time. Thank you. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
O merciful Creator, your hand is open wide to satisfy the needs of every living creature. Make us thankful for your loving providence, and grant that we, remembering the account that we must one day give, may be faithful stewards of your good gifts. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
District 1, Commissioner Oakley.
Here.
District 2, Commissioner Waitman.
Here.
District 3, Commissioner Starkey.
She's on her way.
District 4, Commissioner Bradford.
Excused.
District 5, Chairman Mariano.
Here. Thank you. Now's the time for public comment. Citizens are given an opportunity to comment on any current or future agenda item coming before the board or any other business before the board's purview. Today's public comment will be handled as follows. First, we will take public comment from those who are here in person. Then we will take a public comment from those who are pre-registered for a WebEx link and are currently on queue. We request that when you address the board, comments are not directed personally against a commissioner or team member, but rather directed at the issues. This provides mutual respect between the board members and the public. After stating your name and address for the clerk, a 3-minute timer will be activated. After 2 minutes, a single beep will indicate you have 1 minute left. When your time is up, 2 beeps will sound and you should close your comments. WebEx participants will be disconnected automatically when their time is up. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
Mr. Chair, we do have individuals signed up in person. No one is on WebEx for public comment.
Okay, first person.
All right, we have John Tomsu, followed by Chelsea Waller.
John Thompson.
You may begin. I'm sorry, you may begin.
Apologies. John Thompson, 26738 Wingdale Drive, Wesley Chapel, Florida, 33544. Okay, thank you. So I'm here to talk about items C10 and C14 on the consent agenda. Basically, before I begin, I just want to reiterate, like I always do, special thanks to Tammy Snyder, Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Goldstein. They put up with a lot of questions from regular citizens who don't know the process, don't know the ins and outs of the planning and building departments, etc. So I just wanted to say thank you to them. And then also thank you to the commissioners. If there's one message that I can leave for all of the constituency and the citizens of Pasco County is how easy it is to reach out to the commissioners and work towards solving problems and obviously trying to come up with amicable solutions. This is one of those cases where with Seven Oaks, we've had a long time working on this, even before I became a member of Seven Oaks. But obviously there's a lot of people in Seven Oaks that I represent that still feel the mediation or the agreement doesn't meet what they believe is how Seven Oaks was supposed to be from a character and consistency perspective. They still believe that the way that things are is the way things should be going forward. Of course, we still recognize property owners' rights and individual rights for property owners, but this is one of those unique situations. The only thing that I wanted to bring up on this is the special language that's used. Again, citizens sometimes don't understand the nuance of why things are written the way they are. But one of the special characteristics in the agreement, the settlement agreement, is in the last paragraph where it continues to talk about a site plan that's 2 decades old. I don't know when site plans expire. It's hard to figure out if this one ever did or not. Maybe we just don't know the right questions to ask, but there are some questions about what it is that this site plan reference always comes up means. Maybe there's something hidden in that definition that the citizenry just doesn't understand. And we always welcome your input and review in these types of matters. And again, I just wanted to thank you all again for being so patient and understanding and working with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Waller, followed by Doris Carroll.
Good morning, Chelsea Waller-Dothard with Waller Law on behalf of the Seven Oaks CDD. My address is 38038 Meridian Avenue, Dade City, Florida, 33525. here on C10 and C14 with Seven Oaks. In 2018, this Board of County Commissioners denied the applicant's request to rezone S12B from recreation to professional office use. A few of those reasons for the denial was that, number one, the proposed office use wasn't compatible with the existing development patterns of Seven Oaks. That the office use doesn't meet the criteria for a small-scale office development and a residential future land use designation, and that the denial accomplishes a legitimate public purpose recognized by the comprehensive plan because there was public reliance upon the existing recreational center zoning. Here we are again, 5 years later, and the applicant is requesting the exact same relief they did in 2018 that was ultimately denied. What is different now? What's different is after the board's denial, the county and the applicant entered into a mediated agreement that created a list of primary and accessory and ancillary uses that they deemed recreational. Some of those uses under the agreement for primary was a pool hall and a bowling alley, and one of the accessory and ancillary uses is a dry cleaning facility. So those are commercial uses, and this agreement scared the residents of Seven Oaks. They don't want a main event type business in the middle of Seven Oaks next to the clubhouse, in the middle of their residences. And this is the reason some residents reached out to you all and said they would prefer to have office, because the original mediated agreement was far worse than office use. But that's not the test here. The reasons the Board of County Commissioners denied the request in 2018 still stand, and the applicant's request should once again be denied. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ms. Doris Carroll, followed by Jody Armstrong.
Good morning, Doris Carroll, 5244 Hawk Drive in Holiday, 34690. On Saturday, August 5th, the county commissioners and county officials received an email from the American Indian Movement of Florida, that's Florida AIM, as well as the Florida Indigenous Alliance, which is a coalition of indigenous organizations working for the rights of indigenous peoples. I'm here about the Antelope River Park development. I will speak about some of the highlights of the email. It is appreciated that the Pasco County and Parks placed a hold on the development plans. However, I have a meeting scheduled on August 15th with Christina Cordon about the draft proposal, the Data 3 recovery plan. So the two indigenous organizations are quite concerned. They believe that it would not be in keeping with the spirit and intent of Pasco County ordinances, to wit, Pasco Ordinance 809.7 requires avoidance, minimization, and mitigation in that order of preference of adverse impacts on significant archaeological resources. The report provided by Stantec referred not only to the 5 sites within the development plan area, but also the likelihood of indigenous cemeteries within the footprint of the planned development. Moreover, Pasco County Ordinance 809.9 deems that if an unmarked human cemetery is identified by a qualified professional, that the cemetery will be protected pursuant to this section. Stantec was hired by Pasco County as qualified professionals, and they have advised you that indigenous human remains are likely within the footprint of the development. Be further advised, the Antiquities Act of 1906 prohibits excavations or destruction of antiquities which would occur should development proceed as originally proposed on the Antelope River Park. The American Indian Religious Freedom prohibits preventing indigenous peoples from access to sacred and ceremonial sites, and the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act calls for the protection of indigenous cemeteries. In closing, I want to say to you, how would you feel if there was a decision made by a group of people to bulldoze the National Arlington Cemetery? To the indigenous, this is the same thing. Please respect their sacred burial grounds and stop this development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jody Armstrong, followed by Michael Ciafoni.
Hi, I'm Jody Armstrong, Director of Outreach for Disability Achievement Center located at 12552 Belcher Road South in Largo. Disability Achievement Center is the Center for Independent Living that serves Pinellas and Pasco counties, serving people of all ages with any type of disability. 1 in 7 people have a mobility impairment, and I don't know about you, but I moved here because of our pristine beaches, and 1 in 7 people aren't getting out to them. I was one of the advocates behind the push behind the beach access mats that you have. Really, I'm so excited that you've done this. It provides equal access to anyone to be able to enjoy our world-class beaches. This effort began over 4.5 years ago, and now there's a total of 20 mats in Pinellas and Pasco with 5 more to go. I specifically want to recognize grant writer Katie McMillan for being so proactive by reaching out to the Forward Foundation shortly after the funding announcement was made. And the funding announcement was originally offered to Pinellas County only, but Katie took the initiative to reach out to Pasco, to the funder, and said, hey, would you fund a couple for Pasco? And they said yes. So we're here now, and Northside Engineering did all of the engineered drawings pro bono, so there was a lot of effort behind this push to get these mats in. Prior to this effort, Pasco County had only one at SunWest Park, and thanks to the generous funding from the Forward Foundation, you now have 5 access mats at Hudson, Strickland Park, Moon Lake, Anclote Key, and Reese Key Park. And as part of the funding agreement, Pasco County agrees to maintain the mats so they can be used to their fullest extent. There's a lot of things that Pasco County can do to be more inclusive, and the beach access mat was just one leap forward in that effort. I want to plant a seed for future efforts towards all-terrain vehicles for the nature trails and haptic vests for the deaf so they can hear and experience concerts. So those are a couple ideas that are just out there, and hopefully that you'll be open to other suggestions and things that may help make Pasco County more inclusive, and I'm willing to help you in any way possible. Thank you for supporting this effort to make Pasco County more inclusive. This initiative shows that every single person in Pasco County counts. Thank you.
Before you leave, ma'am, if you would, Colleen, my assistant, would you just give her your card so I can get with you? You brought up a couple ideas I want to talk about. Thank you.
Michael Ciafoni, followed by Dylan Rich.
I would first like to thank you for having me. I have a Moby Mat speech because I'm the person that came up with the Moby Mat thing down in Pasco.
Your name and address, sir?
I have a brain injury, excuse me.
I'm sorry, sir.
In,
First, before you start, just your name and address for the record, and then you can begin.
Michael Chiffone,
Okay.
880 Oleander Way, Pinellas County, Florida.
Thank you.
All right. In the great state of Florida, people come from near and far to enjoy our Gulf beaches. Moby mats are a non-stick permanent pathway to the beach safely and easily for people with disabilities and our aging community. According to the CDC, 28% of adults in Florida live with a disability or are mobility challenged. I've learned to never give up on something you truly believe in. That's what us TBI people do. Think of how many children, veterans, and civilians alike would be able to take these mats down to the water and sit with their families in wheelchairs and comfortably and enjoy the beaches of Pinellas and Pasco County. I and the whole disability community will use these 15 mats in Pinellas and 5 in Pasco. That was just stated by Jody. Thank you to the Forward Foundation for funding them all. They believed in me. Thank you. I just wanted you guys to hear that, because they never put it on TV. I always try to give it when I'm giving a presentation at the beach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dylan Rich. And Mr. Chair, that's the last one I had signed up.
All right.
I have a PowerPoint sent to Gina. No? Is there someone else I can try to send it to? No, I gotta look for it, so you guys gotta move on and come back to me with things. You have to move on and come back to me again.
Is there anyone else for public comment?
I'm sorry, sir.
Anyone else for public comment?
No one else has signed up, but I don't know if anyone doing all call.
All right, while we're waiting for the PowerPoint to come, does anyone else from the public like to address the board?
Does it?
Go for it.
Good morning, Jennifer Kerouac, Pastor Jen, Shady Hills Mission Chapel, 15925 Green Glen Lane. And I just come before you today, and I had the pleasure of speaking with, some folks last night that, I'm very thankful that I did. And some of the perspective of the Shady Hills community and the road situation within Shady Hills, we had gained some learning, and so I come to you today, and what was put on my heart was simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. And so I just come before you today asking that your yes be yes and your no be no for the greater good of the people of Pasco County. That where there are monies that come from particular developments, where there are, monies that are out there that are to go to improvement of roads, that where there is a need for infrastructure, that it would be done. And because it seems that, the information that we received last night was that the significant issue that the community has with regards to the roads is an accountability and a responsibility for Pasco County, and that I was encouraged to come before each of you here today to request that the county step up to do the roads, to get a road study. Someone who had been in the traffic situation for a long time had encouraged us to ask Commissioner Chairman Mariano to get the engineering folks involved, the head of engineering and the county administrator. And so that's all I'm here today with a smile on my face, knowing that I am putting my faith in this group here, that I know that your yes will be yes and your no will be no. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, sir, PowerPoint or not, we need to get going. Sir?
Should make another call for.
All right, anyone else to speak to public comment? All right, so this will be the last speaker. Did you want to speak anyway, sir?
No, thanks.
Okay. We'll close public comment. Time for resolutions. Madam Clerk, would you please read the first resolution? And would the recipient please approach the podium?
Yes, let's see. You are here for Water Quality Month. Please step forward. All right, I'll go ahead and read the resolution. Resolution number 23-162, a resolution by the Board of County Commissioners of Pasco County, Florida, declaring the month of August 2023 as Water Quality Month in Pasco County. Whereas Water Quality Month is dedicated to protecting bodies of water that are part of a connected and shared water resource and are essential for drinking, agricultural needs, and environmental health. And whereas even though water makes up 70% of the Earth's surface, approximately 3% of that water supply is fresh water, with only 1% easily accessible for use. And whereas the sources of drinking water include groundwater from deep wells that draw from the Florida aquifer, desalination seawater, reservoirs and surface waters from rivers, lakes, streams, ponds, and springs. And whereas providing clean, safe, and sustainable water resources are essential to Pasco County's environment, economy, citizens, and visitors. And whereas Pasco County's utility routinely monitors the quality of drinking water for contaminants in accordance with federal and state laws, rules, and regulations. And whereas drinking water provided by Pasco County Utilities meets or exceeds the Environmental Protection Agency regulations and requirements for a public water system. And whereas Pasco County Utilities treatments process for drinking water includes filtration and disinfectants that remove or kill pathogens before they ever reach your tap. And whereas every citizen can make a difference when it comes to protecting water through individual conservation efforts, both inside and outside their homes. And whereas the Pasco County Board of County Commissioners supports and encourages water protection and water conservation measures within Pasco County. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Pasco County, Florida, that said board hereby declares the month of August 2023 as Water Quality Month in Pasco County and calls upon each citizen to help protect this precious shared resource. Done and resolved in regular session with the quorum present and voting this 8th day of August 2023.
Move approval.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Commissioner Oakley.
Yes, sir. Before I get started, I guess, David, you want to say some words?
Yeah, I'll start off.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Oakley and Chair Mariano and other board members. Water quality, I'm David Allen, I'm the Utilities Director, and from a utility standpoint, public health and safety is probably our first and foremost charge in terms of water quality and what we do for the public to make sure that our drinking water is safe for everybody. But I think when you look at water quality as a whole, it touches us in so many different ways and so much, within just Pasco County. Just thinking it through, we have, the ag industry that relies on good water quality. We have the economy, particularly with the coast and preserving that water quality because that serves as a tourist destination and it's important for us to be able to support that. And also through our water conservation efforts, it's very critical. And so we provide, information to our customers annually through our water quality report that shows that we're meeting all the state and federal regulations for water quality. And today, just want to express my thanks and appreciation for acknowledging the efforts that we do. What you see here today is just a small sampling of all of the people that are behind it. We have folks from our field maintenance crews, our lab staff, as well as our project management staff. And so, there's so many more people, not only in utilities, but in other parts of the county that are involved with water quality. And so, again, just want to extend my thanks and appreciation for supporting this resolution.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David. When you go to water quality, Pasco County, the water wars that we've had back in the years and gone through that and now we're part of the, which I'm the chairman of Tampa Bay Water at this time. The water resource of having water and people worry about, but having great quality of water is a must-have on all the water we have. So while I was on my vacation, I visited Niagara Falls, and I said, "Oh, what a resource for water! I wish we had it in Florida." So millions and millions of gallons coming over that they use for electric and water way back the late 1800s and early 1900s was when they used that. But Pasco County's done a great job, and your staff, I appreciate each and every one of your staff members. I know there's more than what's here today, but appreciate all that they do for that water quality, because there are certain things we have to do once we get water from Tampa Bay Water gets delivered here, and good quality water from the reservoir, from the rivers, desal plant. All these waters are blended for a very good quality and comes out one product, one very good, high quality water that we provide for our citizens. So I thank y'all for doing all that you do in that matter for us, providing that water to our citizens. And we always worry about how much water we'll have, or if we're running out of water. In some areas of our region of Tampa Bay Water, actually are hurting for pressure for water because we don't have the pipes ready to provide that water there. But they will soon be able to get the same quality water we have here in Pasco County in our whole region. So we're always looking for more projects to be able to provide a better quality water and more water for our citizens. And the Tampa Bay Water and Pasco County have worked hand in hand to be able to do that. So I appreciate everything that you guys do. So thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Okay. Appreciate your great work. Administrator Carbella.
Be remiss as a water professional if I didn't say thank you. Obviously, ditto, David, to everything that you and the team have said. And it's okay that people take what you do for granted, because they do, and until it breaks, and then we recognize it. But you underpin everything that the county and modern society is built on. So I just want to say thank you for all that you guys do, and well done, well deserved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you will, do you want to stay up here? And
Up here? Yeah.
then I'll go down with David and
Very good.
the group. All right, we'll take a photo.
I do. Thank you.
Okay, folks, right here, please. Excellent, thank you.
At this point, we'll go to the consent agenda. I have a series of pulls.
Got another resolution?
That's 11:45.
Oh, it's a time, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
C30 has been withdrawn. C42, pull and revise. C36, pull and revise. Are there any other pulls from the consent agenda?
Make a motion, we approve the rest of the items on the consent agenda.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll go to C36, Madam Clerk.
Did you want to do C? Oh, we're going in order, sorry. Item C36, I asked to be pulled. We just received the contract minutes ago. My team has not had an opportunity to review it, so if you wouldn't mind approving contingent upon clerk's review.
Okay. Can we have that motion?
I'll make a motion now. Clerk's statement.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. C42?
Oops, there you go. Good morning, Commissioners, Chairman Mariano. I am Alex Parnes, Pasco County Surveyor. It's our recommendation to pull this item. There was a couple small inconsistencies between some documents, very easily fixed. They're now fixed, and then there was some an inconsistency with what the clerk had versus the board. So what we delivered this morning, everything is consistent across the board, so our private and public partners have a consistent set of documents. So very easily fixed.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That takes care of the consent agenda. So move to R59, discussion of single-family detached lots between 40 and 50 feet wide. Mr. Pitos.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Victorious Pitos, Planning and Development Department. So item R59 is the discussion on the subject of single-family detached lots that are between 40 feet wide and 50 feet wide, and some standards on townhomes. A little bit of the history here. The BCC has had some discussions on the subject between January and May of 2023. And there had been previous BCC meetings in 2022 that had also touched upon townhomes. And generally speaking, the bullets that you see on the overhead are the subject areas that various comments from the BCC have sort of bounced around. We discussed this last at the May 23rd BCC meeting in Newport Richey. And at that meeting, it was discussed that some of the commissioner should go on tour with some of the home builders in the area to take a look at what the 40-foot wide lots look like and how they're actually forming up in the built environment. And so those tours happened through the months of June and July. Having conducted those tours, feedback was then gathered from the board members and from the home builders, and we've basically come to a general understanding of some of the sentiments that exist toward the 40-foot wide lots issue. And so we're going to talk today about Policy Memo 26. This is a new memo that's going to help clarify how we want to approach this subject in MPUDs. And the title will be Single-Family Detached and Attached Lot Sizes and Allowances in MPUDs. I'm not going to go into a deep dive on every aspect of the memo. I'll give you all a summary of sort of where everything has landed. But the memo is organized according to these bullet points here. So you'll see the memo talk first about the 40-foot wide lot, standards for the 45-foot wide lot, standards for the 40-foot wide lot, additional standards for all single-family detached lots, updates to Policy Memo 10 in order to harmonize Policy Memo 10 with this policy memo that we're talking about today, PM 26, the townhome standards specifically, and we'll have a short discussion on villas and duplexes, and then applicability to MPUDs and a 24-month assessment. So what you see on the overhead is going to be an image on the left of the actual memo in case anybody is interested in the specific language. But in summary, in this first section, what we're talking about here is no more 40-foot wide lots in general in Pasco County. 40-foot wide lots will only be allowed in specific instances, in T&Ds or TOD development patterns, or in 55-plus communities, which in those 55-plus communities, typically there's a sort of a master developer that has worked out how the landscaping is going to be controlled over time. And then for all other development that would take place in Pasco, the idea would be to have a new minimum lot size at 45 feet wide, and then there's a 50% threshold such that if a development exceeds 50% of its single-family detached lots with a 40-foot wide lot size, they would have to have those be rear loaded. As we move through the memo, we come to the standards for the 45-foot wide lot. So the new minimum lot width would be 45 feet. This would include a 7.5-foot side setback, but there would be options available to enable higher landscaping and only on the explicit notice to the BCC that they would reduce the lot size, have the higher landscaping, and get the BCC's approval given the lot design that they want to do. Then if we continue through the memo, we'll talk about standards for the 40-foot wide lot specifically. So 40s, as I mentioned, would only be allowed in the T&D development pattern or in the TOD development pattern or in 55-plus communities. Here you would continue to see the 5-foot setback, side setback between the houses. This makes sense in the T&D and TOD development patterns because these are traditionally development patterns that are looking for that higher density, more walkable built environment. And it makes sense in the 55 plus communities because you have less landscaping to maintain for people that are generally, well, 55 plus. And so in the T&D and TOD scenarios, you would have these lots be rear loaded because you'd be following that ordinance. We are currently working on updating the T&D ordinance, and preliminary ideas will be discussed actually this month, if I'm not mistaken. And so those conversations will engage the development community to streamline our current T&D code. And so that when we update that code, we'll have better clarity on how the lots actually form up and what kind of rear-loaded requirements we're going to have. And then at 55 plus communities, we would actually allow the 40-foot wide lot to be front-loaded. Some additional standards for all single-family detached lots in Pasco going through the MPUD process would mean that shade trees would be in the front areas of the house, whether that's in the front yard or in the right-of-way, the space between the sidewalk and the street, for example. There would be minimum landscape beds required for all 40 and 50-foot wide lots. And those landscaping requirements, you can see them in the memo text. Coming up. There we are. Right here. So 100 square foot landscape bed area for 40-foot wide lots and 45-foot wide lots, and 125 square foot landscape bed areas for the 50-foot wide lots. These lots would come with a 23-foot long driveway requirement. They would be fronting on 50-foot wide right-of-ways. And this would enable on-street parallel parking allowances to exist in these neighborhoods that would get constructed. In policy memo 10, there needed to be a number of updates such that that policy memo could be harmonized with the direction that this policy memo is issuing. And so, in summary, the T&D incentive that was discussed there's a sunset that's been added. Previously, we were saying that if you were required to build an alley, you would be given the T&D mobility fee incentive. We want to sunset that incentive for when the T&D code is actually updated and you can actually build to a much optimized standard and a better standard that's actually buildable. And so if you do that, if you build according to T&D, you will get the T&D incentive properly. And then, of course, the state statute changed with regard to architectural monotony controls on single-family detached lots, and so PM10 had to be updated according to the state statute changes. And we've added the necessary language in there to enable the voluntary architectural controls that the development community has been imposing through their projects. Additionally, we added that language. We've been adding that language into our conditions of approval and MPUDs that have been coming before the board. The memo now clarifies that this language has to be standard and implemented in every case. No quarterly reporting. After all, the county is now out of the business of controlling architectural standards, so there's no reason for the quarterly reporting anymore. So we've eliminated that. And then we move into clarification on tree placement, how to put it in the front of the house. We've made some additional landscaping harmonizations with PM26 as it relates to the townhome standards, which I'll talk about in just a second. And we've clarified the applicability to single-family homes and townhomes, which in PM10 was kind of ambiguous whether townhomes apply in that memo. They will now. Finally, I think the state statute said that we can't control architectural controls. We can't place architectural controls on 2-unit townhomes. These are also known as villas or duplexes. So we've upped the number from 2 to 8 now to 3 to 8 per Senate Bill 1604, which is now the state statute. And then we've clarified what rear-loaded off the alley should mean. Essentially, that garages for rear-loaded townhomes, garages should be located off an alley or similar access drive in the rear of the home. Here are the PM26 townhome standards that have been talked about with the development community. Mainly, in summary, we're talking about a 15-foot distance between buildings, so you still see that 7.5-foot setback existing between buildings now. You still see the 23-foot lengthened driveway for front-loaded townhomes, a 2-foot wider driveway than the garage door is built into the memo. For townhomes, we are requiring platting. That's a new feature to the discussion. And also, for one-car garages, there should be one-car driveways in order to preserve the front landscaping. And then there's a list of architectural features that, similar to how we did previously with single-family detached homes, now the state statute precludes us. However, we can do this for townhouse products. Here's a list of the architectural features that we would control so that monotony could be avoided among townhouse developments. I won't go through the whole list, but you can see it there in the presentation. Additionally, with the townhome standards, we've introduced a new table for minimum green space on townhouse products. Actually, in some of the more recent MPUDs that have come before the board, these standards have been previewed. The board has actually approved this table in at least 2 to 3 MPUDs in the last couple of meetings. The ratio for palms to shade trees has been explicitly stated, 3 palms to 1 shade tree if you're going to substitute. And then no substituting shade trees with understory or ornamentals. And of course, townhomes should also front a 50-foot residential right-of-way. And both of the right-of-ways, I should mention, are the same. It's the same orientation and division of elements within townhome developments or single-family detached developments. With regard to villas and duplexes, this memo is not applicable to villas and duplexes in terms of the standards here. There hasn't been much discussion from the BCC or the development community identifying that villas and duplexes are an issue. And so they will continue to come forward as they have in the past. The one default change that we're making for villas and duplexes is that we're going to ask that they be platted as a default in terms of the Planning and Development Department's approach to villas and duplexes. So that leaves the applicability to MPUDs. So there are 2 things that the board needs to take into consideration. Under PM10, the logic was that any project that had not yet appeared before the Planning Commission, if I'm not mistaken, the rules would apply to them. Earlier this year, there was a discussion from the BCC that said that these rules should apply all the way up to the moment of the BCC approval. It's basically trying to figure out what the grandfathering, so to speak, point would be if you were in the process. There's a lot of projects that move through the review process. It does take a little bit of time to review, many months. Some projects began prior to the articulation of the BCC's concerns, and so what you could potentially be seeing is MPUDs coming before you that likely include much of what we've talked about today in their conditions of approval, but are not 100% there because they started earlier and had different assumptions built into their project timeline. So this is a decision point, I think, for the Board of County Commissioners to apply here in the red text. The policy memo is applicable to all MPD applications that have not yet received their first round of review comments as of August 8th. Such MPD shall be required to adopt the new standards, or this policy memo is applicable to all MPD applications that have not yet been heard by the BCC, including those that are currently in the review process. So that's a decision point for the Board of County Commissioners to consider. Lastly, there's a 24-month assessment. In previous memos, we've talked about a 6-month assessment because in 6 months, we could properly gauge the success rate of implementing our conditions of approval. Well, we've been very successful in doing that. However, the issue has been what's actually being constructed in the field. And usually between approval and construction is a time period of about 18 to 24 months to make sure that that development actually follows the rules that we've set in place. And so this memo is updated to talk about a 24-month assessment such that in 2 years from now, in August of 2025, the board could take an assessment of all the different MPUDs that have been approved since today. Did they follow through, and how? What is the success rate? What does the end product look like, and are we satisfied with it? And then finally, this is Exhibit A, which kind of shows how the 45-foot wide lots would form up in development with their driveways and their lot lines and the side setback distances, and how the right-of-way is divided to ensure the proper landscaping exists within our residential neighborhoods. That'll conclude my presentation. There are some of the stakeholders here today from the Tampa Bay Builders Association, as well as other stakeholders. Frank Starkey, there he is. Okay, so Frank Starkey is also here today, also to speak to the board a little bit about some of the details.
All right. Any questions for Terry from the board?
I have a couple.
Commissioner Starkey.
Can you put that slide back up? And I think we might see a picture of what this looks like, but I have to say this is a big improvement. But the last slide that showed the diagram. But Terry, did we make any mention of ADUs in this? Because maybe this is a way we can weave the approvals of ADUs in. Because if you have an accessory dwelling unit, if you have a rear-loaded home, it's very easy to add a single apartment or whatever over a garage. You may have a college student who still needs to live at home but wants a little more freedom, or a family member, or you rent it out and you get some more income. So people will tell you having ADUs is one of the best ways to mix in affordable housing. Can we not? Is this not a place where we could make sure that this is getting into our vernacular?
No, this is not a place where you could do this.
It takes so long.
But this is a policy memorandum. This is not an amendment to your land development code.
Right.
Right.
This is a design.
Okay. So
It's an enhancement to your land development code.
It's a policy memo is a guidance for how the Planning and Development Department ought to negotiate with the development community to make sure that we are meeting certain objectives within the MPUDs that we negotiate.
okay.
So to the point of negotiation, can we negotiate ADUs into an MPUD? Yes, you could negotiate ADUs into an MPUD. This memo doesn't really consider ADUs. That's a whole other discussion. We were trying to solve the 40-foot wide, or the width of the lot question that the board had put forward.
So I think Frank has his presentation ready, and you have the photos. And one of the things I want us to look at is this third house down on the left, which is I'm guessing that's a 40-foot lot, two-car garage.
This is an image of the 45s.
So the whole front is concrete,
No,
basically. The third one
you
down.
can see these black lines here are the lot lines. And so this is illustrating a 45-foot wide lot dimension. What you're seeing is a dark shadow that's kind of on the south side.
Well, I'm looking at the driveways compared to the front width of the house. But I think we have some photos. Can we have Frank's comments, and then we'll go to the...
Well, let's take the board members first. Thank you. All
Yeah.
right. Commissioner Waitman.
Thank you, Chair. In this memo, we have projects that come before us where we talk about kind of concessions with reduction of the park space or the green space in them. Was that subject addressed in this
No,
memo?
because in a single-family detached, or even in a single-family attached townhouse development, the developers typically will meet the park requirements without alternative standard, and without changing the code. So
It doesn't really-
I guess what I'm saying is that in a single-family residential neighborhood, they will have the necessary park space that the code requires.
Okay. And then the next piece of this, is there any synergies between this memo and the build-to-rent product memo that we can do to expound upon what we've already done?
There is, I believe in the sense that if one were to build a built-to-rent product, what they're really building is a single-family neighborhood, and they'll have to meet the single-family requirements that this memo is speaking to.
So going forward, then they would be 45s.
Right.
Okay.
For that single-family development type. We have to remember that build-to-rent is a business model, it's not a land use type. The land use type is what we're talking about here in terms of the lot widths. What ends up happening with that lot later on, whether that's sold fee simple or used as a build-to-rent, what we get is that standard that we've set up.
So this will be implemented to that product then?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Oakley?
Yes, Terry, it's showing a car parked in that road. In this project,
talked to Jeff.
did we widen the road to be able to park on one side? Because if you didn't widen the roads that we have in place now and park a car in the road, there's no way two-lane traffic can go by that car.
We have not widened the right-of-way. We've kept the right-of-way at our standard 50-foot right-of-way. What you see in the image is two travel lanes that are 11 feet apiece. So that's what, 22 feet wide travel lane. A parked car is typically about 9 feet wide. So you'll be able to transit around a parked car that's parked on one side of the street. So yes, in this kind of scenario, you wouldn't want two cars parked right across from each other because you can't get through. And
So-
neighbors are generally aware that they have to keep the road clear in order for them to get to their houses. So people often self-regulate and stagger their car parking appropriately.
Well, the problem happens is people don't self-regulate like they should. So, and that gets to be a problem, but when these are built, you just have them where they're parked on one side of the road and not the other.
Yeah, that was not talked about in this memo, but there are conditions of approval within MPUDs, and I believe in the code too, that talk about how if there's going to be allowed any on-street parking, how it should be placed within the right-of-way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Whitman?
So to Commissioner Oakley's point, we're not adding any additional space for, say, garbage truck to get down and turn around and service folks, if folks aren't self-regulating as you described that they do, because I can assure you they don't.
Yeah.
And it increases a lot of liability for people who have to provide services to neighborhoods like these. There needs to be some more room to be able to get down and provide the essential services that, to keep the neighborhood clean.
I mean, that's going to be, I think, a standard dilemma. I mean, if you want your garbage to get picked up, don't park in front of your garbage can. Let the garbage truck access your garbage can. I mean, I learned that lesson myself. And I've had to sit with a full can for an extra couple of days because my car was parked on the street and the garbage truck couldn't reach and lift it up. So, point taken, understood.
Anything else, Commissioner Starkey?
No, it's funny, I was having a little sidebar with Jeff on the on-street parking. But I like on-street parking, it calms the traffic down, but you do have to be able to get the garbage trucks around. And the way we get around that in Long Beach is it's on one side of the street only. and I think there's certain widths that we need to think about, and I think Frank will touch on that when he speaks.
All right. Terry, I got a couple of comments. On the width of the driveway, we give them like 2 feet wider than what the garage is, or the opening is.
Correct.
And I think that should be moved up to about 4 feet. And I'll give you an example why. Let's say you get a 2-car garage, and part of it's gonna have some stuff in it, maybe only 1-car garage, like my house is being done. If I don't park in the very, very edge, right next to my sprinklers, I'm gonna run over those sprinklers. I wanna give the flexibility to the builders, if they wanna go 2 feet wider, that they have that flexibility. It just makes it a little bit more usable depending on how it gets played out. I don't know what the board thinks about that, but
No, I don't like it.
I figured that.
Because you're just gonna have you know, if you like that townhome look with the whole concrete front, I can show you a picture of that. That's what you're proposing. Is a house with only concrete in the front.
No,
Unless it's a single car garage.
And again, I'm looking at 2 feet extra, not anything more than that. And I want to give the flexibility to the builders if they want to make it that way, that they can go do it.
He did put 2 feet in.
I know, I want to give them 2 foot more. You've got 2 foot now. I want to give them the flexibility to go to 4.
I mean, depending on the design of the house, the garage, you could easily exceed the width of the home.
Yes, if you like that look, where it's all concrete in the front.
I'm just looking at,
I'm gonna show you a picture.
we're talking about parking, we could talk about parking issues, et cetera, and I'm saying, when people have space, if it makes it a little bit easier for them, I'd like to give them a little extra space. And I also sent you something, Terry, on, as far as in the front area, looking where that car is parked on the map, you see that green area that's right there? That front area in Hillsborough County, from what I understand, has gone to where they say you can't put an oak tree there. And we can go to neighborhood after neighborhood where the oak trees are planted so close to the roadway. My neighborhood, Beacon Batista's got it. Balance rate, we had to do a big project where we took all the trees out. There were oak trees in the middle that ruined all the sidewalks. And their liability kind of falls back on us. We get calls, you know, who's gonna fix my sidewalk? Hillsborough County put an ordinance in place. I sent it to Terry to take a look at it. And if we put that in place there, at least we don't have to deal with that issue there. The oak trees, if they're back in the part of the lot, they won't have a problem, but I think it's something we should strongly take a look at, and I think we'll have a conversation from the people in the audience, the stakeholders as well. And when the stakeholders come up, I want them to talk. Right now we got a ratio from 3 to 1 with palm trees. I think palm trees are good as far as like affecting things. Not as much for a shade tree, but if you're okay with that ratio, I'm okay with it, but if they have an issue with that, I'd like them to say so. Last thing, using the rear yards, I think is something that's very big. And recently went to a neighbor's house that had taken their whole backyard. They got a pool, they've got a bar, they got cornhole, etc., and they made it artificial turf. And it works really well for them to maintain it. You don't have to mow it, you don't have to do any lawn maintenance, no pesticides going in, no water being used. I think it's a good use if we need to allow it, but again, we talked about that, so I'll listen to the stakeholders as well on it, but I'm going to float that to you before we go. Commissioner Waitman.
Thanks, Chair. So when you say we're in this memo, we're doing 2 feet, you're asking for, you know, another foot on either side. Are you saying the language to allow the builder to go up to 4 feet? Not mandatory, but
right,
up to the
yes.
option? Okay, thank you for clarification.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. Now, do you want to have some stakeholders speak as well, Terry?
Yes, we have some stakeholders here that can present some of their information and perspective on the subject.
Okay.
Terry, before we do that, can we have Frank's presentation?
I think that's what
You got that?
yeah, they're loading it right now. So.
Well, Frank's coming up too. One thing I did want to comment on the on-street parking. I do think one side, if we're going to keep 22-foot streets, is something that we need to let them go put in their regulations too.
So,
Good morning.
Name and address, please.
I'm sorry.
Name and address, please.
Frank Starkey, 5939 Grand Boulevard in Newport Richey. I'm an architect and real estate developer by trade. My brother Trey and I, who's married to Commissioner Starkey, developed Longleaf, which is the original and so far only real T&D developed in the county. And a lot of the lessons learned there were applied in the T&D ordinance, but I think they went a little bit too far. But in the process, we'll come back to that later on the street discussion, but in the process of doing that, of developing Longleaf, I served as the town architect and interacted with the home builders in negotiating the design of the houses, as well as when we were doing the entitlements for Starkey Ranch, DRI, I talked a lot with home builders there. So I'm familiar with a lot of their concerns and issues, both as builders and as the architects designing the houses for them.
Frank, could you talk more about what you do nationally and your affiliations?
Well, I can email you on my CV. I'm the vice chair of the board of the Congress for the New Urbanism, and I'm also a past president of the National Town Builders Association, which is an organization of developers who do new urbanist traditional neighborhood development projects across the country. And I've been involved with at a leadership level with the new urbanism movement for 20 plus years. A couple of the issues that to consider about front-loaded 40-foot lots, which I understand are problematic from an aesthetic standpoint. Y'all have expressed an interest in limiting or eliminating those. But I wanted to just explain using on-the-ground examples, and this isn't to single out anybody, any developer or project, but just as an example of just some of the laws of physics. When you have a 40-foot wide lot with 10-foot wide setbacks, that leaves you a 30-foot wide house. The thing that happens as you make a house narrower is garages don't get any narrower because they have to be a 16-foot wide door and you need space. They basically have to be 20 feet. They cannot squeeze any less than that. I've occasionally seen 18 foots, but I don't know any builders in Pasco County that are building 18-foot wide garages because it's just, unless you drive 2 Mini Coopers, it's just too hard to use on the inside. So the garage doesn't get any narrower beyond below 20 feet. What happens is that as you make the house narrower, the house part of it gets narrower. When you get below about 12 feet, you don't have enough width for a room. So all you can have is a foyer. So what you have in this photo, you can see that the 20 foot of the garage with around 10 feet of the house, the garage dominates it just by pure math. But also, because that width for the livable space or the air conditioned space is so narrow that it's not really practical to build that out. So a plan is typically going to push that back towards the back of the garage so that you're not air conditioning a corridor for no good reason. So this is an example of it where the entrance to the house is recessed, which makes the garage even more visually dominant. That right now, in that example there, the driveway is 16 feet wide, garage doors are 16 feet wide. If you make it 2 feet wider if you make it 2 feet wider, which is what the proposal is, you can picture that that's just going to be, that much wider. And Commissioner Mariano, to your point, I think I don't know what Terry's written, but I think he's talking about minimums. If builders want to build wider, I don't know why they wouldn't. If they wanted to do an 18-foot, if the market demanded a 20-foot wide driveway instead of an 18, because it's currently 16. You see what I'm saying? So 16 is the width of the garage doors, and that's standard practice. The proposal is to widen that 2 feet to 18 feet. And you're suggesting
about the driveway or the garage door?
I'm talking about the driveway. Garage door is a garage door. They're always 16 feet. Yes, they make 20 feeters, but I don't know any builders that use those, except in custom houses and things. So go to the next slide. Does this control the slides? Okay. These are two houses that are adjacent to each other in a development that's being built right now. These are front-loaded 40-foot lots. You have the same dynamic happening here, and I've got the floor plans on the next slide, but the entrance side of the house is recessed somewhat, but not as far as the other one. It has a little bit more street presence because it's a two-story house, and especially the one on the right, the two-story part is over the garage, so it looks like a two-story house. This is, a little bit better looking than because you see more house there. I think what people what people find appealing is the housey parts of the house, not the garagey parts of the house. 8-foot garage doors, incidentally, when you have a single car garage door, that's kind of in the scale of a house and it doesn't look too bad, but the market pretty much demands 2-car garages, and that's what generally gets built, so that's what you're dealing with. Okay, so this is the floor plan of those 2 houses. One of them's, the one on the left is mirrored, but you get the point. So you've got the 20 foot of the garage and the 10 feet of the entry. Just doesn't leave much for usable space there. In both of these cases, there are entries there and storage. I've seen some other plans that have a utility room up there. When it comes to walkability, whether it's in a T&D or a conventional neighborhood, people still walk in. It's not like people only walk in T&Ds and walkability only matters there. The shortcoming of the front of this house is that it doesn't have any windows on any living spaces. The only windows are on the upstairs, which are likely bedrooms or maybe bathrooms, and not likely to have the curtains open, and not conversational things where you're going to see your neighbors and have the eyes on the street that make walkability a little bit better. Also, with these narrow side porches, they're not really big enough to furnish. Yes, you could put a chair and table out there, as some people do, or maybe a porch swing, but it doesn't really create a friendly front porch like you see when you've got like this. This is in another neighborhood in the same subdivision, I think, or the same project. These are both 40-foot lots, garage front and garage back. You can see that you have the 2/3, 1/3 situation going on the right, and these are both obviously a little bit more architecturally bumped up, probably higher price point houses. I don't think you should rely on price point and architectural features, because that's just going to push affordability out of reach for a lot of the market, which is just not a good or realistic thing to expect. There was a suggestion that, well, if we widen the side setbacks, that will help the situation. What that does, if you've got the same size lot, widening the setbacks narrows the house, which, going back to that 20-foot wide, you know, it comes out of the fat, it comes out of the meat, not out of the bone of the house. Then you're just making the house part of the house narrower, and the garage isn't going to get narrower. So you actually can exacerbate the aesthetic problem of front-loaded houses by making the setbacks bigger and the houses narrower. The other thing it does is that extra space just kind of gives a more gap-toothed look to the street facade, and it gives you more view of the side length, the boring side of the house, which usually have very few windows and are just kind of blank. Wider setbacks just give you more view of that, so you're just looking more at the less interesting part of the house. When the houses are closer together, then you're paying more attention to the front, where the architectural interest is more, there's more detail put in place there. Again, the comment on the house on the left, by having a full porch with furniture on it, in this case an extravagant double porch, but even just a single porch, that makes a much more conversational streetscape than the one on the right, which unfortunately has its landscaping blocking what would be a view of the porch, even if there wasn't a chair out there. These are some lots in Longleaf that were originally platted to be townhouse lots, and after the Great Recession, when townhouses were just not a reality in the market, F Street Homes went in and replatted these to 30-foot wide lots that are rear loaded. And my suggestion would be, if you're going to make a requirement that if you want to do 40-foot lots, they have to be rear loaded, which I think is a sensible requirement, you should also consider allowing those to be even narrower lots to help offset the cost of the alley. So architecturally, a house on a 30-foot lot is superior, that's rear loaded, is equivalent to or superior to a 40-foot lot that's front loaded. I would argue even a 50-foot lot, because there you've got 20 feet of actual house. With a 50-foot lot, you might get 20 feet of actual house and 20 feet of garage. But if you're, I would give a concession on the lot width to allow higher density to help offset the cost of the alley for rear-loaded lots, which I think gives you a win-win-win all around. These are a couple situations that Catherine sent me pictures of some of your parking issues. I think that Hillsborough County, jokingly, I think that Hillsborough County Sheriff's deputy should be ticketed for parking like a jerk. That's, you know, a very irresponsible way for an officer of the law to park.
I think there's 2 of them there, actually.
Yeah, the other one's parked all right. Yeah, the other one's where they should be, though, but the one parking, I mean, he's not only the street, he didn't even leave enough gas for somebody able-bodied to even squeeze between the 2 vehicles. The ones on the left, I don't know what you do about that. If there were a vertical curb there, the sidewalk, that would obviously have kept the cars from parking on the sidewalk. There's no width constraint in that street, so I don't know what the problem is. I don't know why cars chose to park that way. There seems to be, I guess there just needs to be some sort of visual clue that it's okay to park on the asphalt completely. And to the comments earlier and the questions earlier about blocking streets, if you've got, and this is going back to front-loaded streets and the illustration that Terry showed, if you've got driveways on the street, people, you know, you can't park in front of the driveways for the most part. So that very much limits the number of cars that are going to be on the street anyway. So the conditions where you will have the ability for cars to park directly across from each other. Yes, people can be idiots and park stupidly, but that's always the case anyway. If there are just fewer on-street spaces, then that's less of a problem. In general, I think your street standards are far too wide for, especially for traditional neighborhood developments, but for a lot of cases. Your alley standards are off the charts. I mean, they're built heftier than streets with curbs on not only outsides, but also required down the center. That upper left inset picture shows where an alley intersects a street, and you can tell where the alley ends because the curb in the center, the gutter curb ends. It's just kind of a extravagant, like, we want these alleys to never ever fail under any circumstance, and I think generally in development you just have to kind of allow a little bit of slack for things to not always be perfect. And this is an entrance street into a neighborhood, but gosh, that's wide enough to taxi a Cessna. There's just no need for that to be that wide. It's got dedicated off-street, it's dedicated parallel parking, which is not the same thing as on-street parking. So those are parking that are in bays completely outside the travel way. Plus it's got bike lanes, which is really unnecessary. This is a neighborhood street that doesn't even go through to anywhere. And all that does is serve to just widen the visual heft of the street and make you want to just drive faster. So I would seriously narrow down your street standards. And this is another condition. This is a silly situation that happened from the application of a requirement to have mid-block passages. On the picture on the left plan, where that red arrow is where just to the left of that, you can see that that sidewalk just goes and stops. This is a picture of how it ends. Clearly a silly condition, but the bigger issue with this is this a laser beam? Is that the sidewalks don't connect out to Chansey Road, and it really only is doing anything to connect within the neighborhood, which is not really walkability in the reducing the transportation issues sense of the term. So that's all I've got.
Yeah.
Any questions?
So, Frank,
Mr. Starkey.
Well, thank you. The one thing I like about having a wider space between the houses, I get what you're saying, but it does allow for that on-street car to be parked there for extra parking.
Actually not.
Huh?
The space for on-street parking is a function of how far apart the driveways are, which is a function of how wide the lots are. It has nothing to do with the setbacks have no impact on that whatsoever. So if the setbacks, I mean, it'll push two closer together, but the other ones will be farther apart, or vice versa. So If you've got 40-foot lots, you're going to have driveways on average every 40 feet, regardless of what the building setbacks are. You could have no building, and you could have just a garage on that, and wherever it is in that, on average, you're going to have 40 feet, which means sometimes it'll be 20 and sometimes it'll be 60 if you have houses that are flopped next door to each other. But it's really not going to have a material impact on the number of on-street spaces if you increase the side setbacks.
Commissioner Whitman.
Thank you. Chair, thank you, Mr. Starkey. So basically what boilerplate, what I heard is larger lot size to account for the current way houses are built, and or we decrease the lot size to the 30-foot. So what I heard out of you explain is we either go a larger lot size to accommodate kind of the size houses being built now to avoid that rectangle, more narrow shape, or we go to the smaller lot size
Rear loaded.
with what you described on the 30 or 30-foot example there. It puzzles me a little bit because they're kind of, you know, they're polar from one another.
The difference is front-loaded versus rear-loaded.
Yeah.
Go narrower if the lots are rear-loaded, and then you can, and the developer may want to go to narrower lots because the alley costs more to build. So you kind of have to make up for that with more lots on the same amount of street. So if you're rear loading, then you can go to a narrower lot than if you're front loading. So that's what I'm saying.
So when you talk with the additional costs and alleyways and everything you're describing there, I mean, I'll just throw it out there generally. I can't imagine the cost difference to just have your standard larger lot size, say 50. I mean, it's more green space, same size house. You'd have less road, no alleyway, kind of, you know, less infrastructure there. So I've really have my wheels turning and with your presentation on what is the best fit, which would be interesting to hear from the TBVA group, but it's really pushed me to have more questions. You know, what is the most efficient model here? And as far as narrowing streets for the parking, I tend to disagree. To be able to provide the services that need to be with the residents. We saw on pictures of people's, you know, self-discipline and parking. With tight spaces like that, especially if they have a service vehicle that their works allow them to bring home, they have kids and they have one or two personal vehicles, they'll have to figure out a way to park. So narrowing the streets, I'm struggling with that a little bit. So that's just my comments, but I appreciate your expertise on this.
Okay. Commissioner Stark.
I think, you know, I'm always a carrot and a carrot, and so I think it's a carrot to say if you want to do more density, you can, if you do the alleys, you can get more homes. You can have more density if they're rear loaded, because it makes a very nice streetscape, and it makes a community. So I think that's a trade-off that we're suggesting, that because we don't allow, I don't know if we allow 40s, Terry, do we? I mean 30s, without, is it, what does our code say about 30s?
The land development code has a minimum lot width of 60 feet. So the only way to get 30s would be through an MPUD.
Well, so say don't discount 30s.
This is all MPUD discussion.
Yeah, don't discount 30s if they're rear loaded. This is, look at that street. That's a great looking street right there. Those sold out like crazy. Now they're small. They're not for everybody.
Well, some of those are 2,400 square foot houses.
Okay,
They're not that small. They're, Commissioner Waitman, to address your question, that's a question that the developer of a specific project would answer. But in general, the more houses you can get per gross acre, the better off you're going to be. If you can get more dwellings, I mean, it reduces your infrastructure costs per unit. Yeah. And as land prices go up, which they obviously are, then that becomes more and more critical. So simply lowering or increasing lot sizes as the only answer is going to work against the ability to, the financial drivers that are pushing development. To say nothing of affordability, getting larger lots makes for an automatically higher price point just out of the gate. So for all of those reasons. So generally, smaller lots with more units per acre. I don't like to use the D word because it gets people's hackles up. But generally, if a developer can get more units on a given piece of land, they're going to want to do that. And it also means that many more units that don't have to go to the next given piece of land and start to push into the areas that you want to protect from development or keep in truly low density development. 50-foot lots are not low density at all. It's just it's kind of it still consumes land at a pretty high rate.
Mr. Oakley.
Yes, sir. Somebody was asking me one day if I cared about the law they put in. I think something happened in Hernando County with 40 and 50-foot lots and things, and they said, was I worried about that law coming into being? And I said, no, it doesn't affect me at all. And he said, why not? I said, because I don't want 40 and 50s. So that law doesn't have anything to do with what we want, but I definitely not moving to 30s. I've seen some 40-foot lots in some areas with houses that are all 2-story.
Did you send it to me?
There is absolutely no green area between them or around them or in front of them. I mean, there's just no green area.
Are they with driveways?
Kids have no place to play.
Are they with driveways in the front or with driveways in the back? That's
In the
my
front.
point.
They were in the
Well,
front.
yeah, never 30s in
That's
with
my
the
point.
front
Yeah,
driveway.
they were in the front.
Front garage.
And
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
we're
not
talking
even good
about not
for
cheap houses. We're talking about houses selling for over $500,000. I don't think that's what our citizens really want. Pasco County's been with a rural area and tended to go urban in some areas more so than I think people want. And I like more green space, and I like homes to look nice in the front and good landscaping. So we've missed that on some of the homes that we've gotten developed so far, and that's what we're trying to do now is correct it. So
I understand your point, Commissioner Oakley. The point of my presentation is to
Right.
say that I'm not advocating for anything, but I'm just saying if you've got an equivalent 40-foot lot, if it's rear loaded, then it does have the green space in the front. It does have a friendlier street. It does have a better appearance. And even if you go narrower, it still is an improved street appearance. And also remember that, right down the street from any of these is a pretty darn good neighborhood park. That's part of the county code requirements.
I understand, but some people have small kids that can't walk to the park and their mother can't take them, and they have no yard to play in at their house. So.
Okay. All right, we've got a few time certains coming up, so let's hear from the rest of the group that are here. Thank you, Frank. Next would like to come up. By the way, I want to thank the TBBA for being so flexible to listen to us, to what our statements up here on the dais, to actually go through these voluntary things that we're going through. So, Mr. Briggs, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Edward Briggs of the RSA Consulting Group, 235 West Brandon Boulevard, Brandon, Florida, representing the Tampa Bay Builders Association today. I just want to start and stop by just wanting to say this. I just want to thank you, the Commissioners, Chair, and I really want to thank Mike Carbella and his staff for all the time they've spent working on this issue. With you all, with us, because a lot of labor of love has gone into this policy middle. So thank you also to Terry Pitos and his team as well. And I think what you had before you and listening to, also want to appreciate Frank for coming up and talking as well and adding his comments. I think one of the biggest things that came out of all of this is options. That's what you're looking at today, is different options for home buyers, different options for the market. And really, this memo that we have before you today, the TBBA really feels comfortable supporting. Is it everything that we want? No. Is it, and I think that's one of those things that even when I talk in Tallahassee, That's really good public policy. When it hurts everybody across the end, we probably have a good product right there on the table. And I think that this memo really does keeps the integrity of the market, allows those options to continue, allows for that flexibility of the home buyer to be able to afford different particular price points, but also gives you all something that we've heard over and over again, which is quality and a product that will last the test of time. And that's something that you all wanted. And that's something that I think this memo gets you at when you start looking at it. Are there things maybe that you want to tweak here and there? Absolutely, we completely understand that, but we're very comfortable with it today. And the biggest thing is the market helps drive that. And that's something I wanted to give you all today on behalf of the TBBA to all to pass out, is really the home obtainability by lot size. And I think this is very, very important for you all to look at as you look at the average salaries throughout Pasco County here, and how that equates to what a single person versus a married couple can afford to live here in Pasco, and what they can get out for a mortgage versus FHA, VA, or your typical conventional loan. Because I think that will tell you a lot based on what you're seeing that was displayed on the different price points and what people can actually afford to get into. And I think that's a key factor when you're starting to think about things and how you want to make sure that people hear. So I'd love to pass this out, Commissioner.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Good, pass from the clerk.
And with that, Mr. Chair, I also wanted to say with me today, and I would allow them, with your indulgence, allow them to come up. I have Martin Frame, the president-elect for TBBA, as well as Trent Stevenson, who is our TBBA Government Affairs Chair for Pasco County, and also one of our Pasco GA members, Jeff Olashager. So I would also invite them up to say a few words.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Martin Frame with David Weekly Homes and President-elect for TBBA. I just wanted to start by just thanking you all for your time. We spent a lot of time with staff over the last 2 months. We've been able to give tours to most of the commissioners. I think that it was beneficial to get out and see some of this, some of the developments, some of the items that we have in here for landscaping, what we're going to be doing about creating longer driveways to allow for larger trucks in these driveways so they don't overhang the sidewalks, working with staff on the right-of-ways to have enough space for cars and trucks to get around. So just getting into some of the specific items that were brought up today. Seth, you had brought up some of the issues with on-street parking. I do want to add that to the additional 22 feet that we have for drive lanes, there's also 2 additional feet on either side of what we call a mountable curb, where a car could put a tire or a truck could drive over without getting into the grass. So effectively, a vehicle would have 26 feet to maneuver. I think that's important to note. It does give you substantial more space than a mountable curb, which is what the vertical curb is. And that is one item I talked about with Terry making an adjustment in the memo. Right now it does say vertical curb. I think the intent is for us to go with a mountable curb that you'd be able to drive over. So that'd give us a little bit more space without having to go past the 50-foot right-of-ways. Commissioner Mariano, in regards to some of your issues with trees, TBBA is perfectly happy with precluding the oak trees from areas where they would cause damage. We could work with staff to create some language to that effect and probably reference what's been done in Hillsborough County and other counties who have been outlawing oak trees in certain areas because they do cause damage. So no issues there. And then as far as just the lot widths that we're talking about today, I think it is important to note that we're not talking about 40s today. We're really talking about 45s. So we are agreeing to a larger lot size than we have initially hoped for. You know, you've had me up here but in the past, and we were looking for a 42, which would have been a 6-foot side yard. We're at a 45 today, and while it's not exactly what we want, we're willing to support it because we know it's a negotiation and we want a back and forth relationship with y'all. Wanted to see if y'all had any other specific questions in regards to the document that's been floated around. One other item, just so Mariano, on the width of the driveways, I don't think that we'd have any issue with allowing more width on the driveways to accommodate for people not having to step out and break their sprinkler heads and such.
Okay. And Mark, I want to say I greatly appreciate your hosting us. I'm sure you hosted everybody for me to go out there and actually look at it, because I'm a big fan of the front loaded. I like the way that goes, but I'll tell you, the product that you put out there, the landscaping you put out there, showed for a good look.
Yeah, and I think that's important. it's something that we've been able to work with all of the developers and all of the home builders on to get to a place that's not just representative of 20 or 30% of the home builders. We have, I think, probably what is effectively 85% of the homes being built in the county as part of our group and as part of this discussion. So it's very important to know that we're all along for this ride together with all of them. And so we have a lot of support internally. And it's not without some internal debate to get where we are today.
Well, I know we all greatly appreciate you guys listening to the comments were made. I know the conversation I was having before these even started to get surfaced, where there's dialogue going back and forth. Because I think we're all in agreement. We want to make a top quality product, so it's good for you to have your great sales going, keep on going, but at the same time, we can have a good long-lasting product down the road that we can all be proud of and happy to see. And we've seen some mistakes out there that we've seen that I think the way you've laid it out and your cooperation with these architectural, landscaping, other features that is going to be good for all of us. Commissioner Waitman.
Chair, I just have to advocate for our oak trees. Maybe it's because of where I was raised. But I prefer the look of an oak tree, live oak tree, over palm trees. So wherever they're appropriate, but I'm a fan of our oak trees, so I'll just leave it there.
And we are working to give a little bit more space. A lot of communities have 5 feet between the curb and the sidewalk. We are looking at this new standard to have 7 feet, and we can work with staff to figure out what's appropriate and where they're appropriate, because I think everybody loves oak trees. It's just getting them in the right place.
And Mr. Commissioner Waitman, literally, we've been through, and I've seen in my neighborhoods and around us, if you put them out right in the edge in that little space that's right there, as they grow up, it may not happen for 10, 15, 20 years, but it's gonna, and when it does, you get an issue that you got to deal with. So if they put them closer to the house in those sections there, they work great. But just out on the very edge of the street, and again, for Hillsborough to take a motion on it, I think is a smart thing. I know we're not pushing to go, but sometimes people who do like the oak trees will put them in there, but they're just going to cause problems for down the road. Commissioner Starkey.
So I've just spent some time in Key West that has oak trees that have been there for 100 years in the sidewalk. And it's amazing that I rode my bike all around those sidewalks and I didn't fall down and crack my head open because they find ways to deal with a bumpy root structure. And a lot of these guys live in Old Northeast, Hyde Park, that most of them are living in a rear loaded, I will let you know that, on alleys. And they have an oak canopy. And I was so grateful for that oak canopy in Key West because it was hot. So I'm with you. I'm a big fan of the oak trees. We're knocking them down when we don't need to. And I've had discussions with Mike Cabal about valuing these large oak trees a little more because I don't think we value them enough. There was some research I saw somewhere that an oak tree supports either 400 and 500 different species, but a palm tree supports about 3, and I think it's rats and what are those nasty cockroaches? Cockroaches. I went to trim my palm tree in front of my roadhouse, and a dead rat fell out. It's disgusting. So, no, I love palm trees, but I too want to thank you guys. I know you guys have put a lot of time into this, and I know it caused you all a lot of angst. Caused us a lot of angst too. But I think we all want a better Pasco, and so I really appreciate it. You know, it's not 100% where I would like it to be, but it's so much better than what it was before. I'm glad we're redoing our T&D ordinance. No one has ever used it. It's so bad. Even those of us who did a T&D neighborhood, we didn't use it either. So I'm glad to hear that, and I hope that we can get that alley issue fixed so that it's not so expensive and our road widths aren't so wide, and get those development costs down. Because I do really think that people who want to live in a community where they know each other like that kind of community. A lot of our county staff live in communities like that, actually. So I'm grateful to y'all for all the time, and I know this will look better. I did want to show one photo of what it looks like when you have a really wide driveway, Commissioner Mariana. If you can she could put that out. It is a townhome, but you can just get the idea. And I did meet with, I'm not gonna say the name of this developer, but I did meet with them, and they are not gonna do these anymore. So this is not to denigrate that developer, but just to show you what, no, not that one, the one I just emailed you. Hopefully you got it. I mean, when you have a really wide driveway, that's the look you get.
Yeah, and that's a townhome, and I'm just talking about a foot, and when you look at a foot, one of those pictures that Frank was actually showing actually showed an angle on the driveway coming out the bottom that kind of formed at a 30-degree angle coming through. You get a sidewalk goes across through, so I don't think it would have the same effect that that's got. But if you go take a look at, drive down Regency Park, go look at all the cars that are parked in the yards, because it can't have enough room to get in there. So I'm just trying to accommodate, if somebody's gonna have a small house, they may fill up the garage, they may get one car out of the two in the garage, like I said, in my house. If you don't have the room to get to the side, it makes it really tough to get in and out. It just, if the builder wants to do it, I want to give them the flexibility, that's all. Let them make the call. I don't think it's a dramatic change, so I want to give them flexibility to build the product they think. And again, I want to thank you guys for coming forward to work with us every step of the way. This hasn't been a combative thing whatsoever, and I think it's been to a very good product coming up. As we go, your members themselves may want to comment to us about the different things that may affect them. Share that information, reach out to them, and reach out to us, because this is a presentation only today. We'll be taking the steps forward to go to work the policy.
One more
Commissioner Starkey.
So Frank pointed out, and I hadn't realized that, but in the layout of, and I don't know whose floor plans those were, but I get it, when you have the garage, when you have a front-loaded 40, the door area, the entry is narrow.
Mm-hmm.
Is there no way to push that forward and push the garage back so you don't have this, I think I've heard it called snout-nosed or...
I believe that was handled actually last year, in the memo last year that we're updating, and it's still included, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, we do have the strategy to bring the house elements forward so that you see parts of the house and not so much the garage dominating them.
So we are requiring the door to be more forward, but we don't want a flat front.
I think it's 3 feet back
Yeah,
is the minimum.
we allow the encroachment to take place.
So I think there's some code in there from last year, because that was one of the big issues that was brought up with the memo last year. And this memo is restating that memo. So that should still be in its entirety, from what I understand.
But, and there's a minimum amount of 40s that can be on a block in this memo, or 45s, whatever. I mean, because 45 may be a wider lot, but it's still going to be a 20-foot garage and what, a 10-foot space for the door, or 8 foot, or whatever it is. So it's still that awful look, unless it's 2-story. Yeah.
Yeah. The ability to bring the house forward is still, it was part of PM10 and will be part of PM26, and everything is harmonized between the two memos. So you should still be able to give that encroachment and incentivize the architecture of the house.
Cool.
Like I said, it's not 100% what I want, but it is better.
All right. Mark, anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from TBA want to speak? All good? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all very much. We greatly appreciate your working with us, and looking for your feedback as we go a little bit further down the road.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to have planning staff implement this. The question really back to the board is applicability. Terry had mentioned it before as far as looking at it when it was, Terry, it was when it first comes to the board,
Yes.
or when the application, if you could just expand upon that real quick so we can get more direction on that.
This policy memo, I would need direction from the Board of County Commissioners to go and implement the directives of the memo. But we need to know when to apply it. So we have a bunch of MPUDs in the process. Do we want to allow all the MPUDs that have received their first round of comments to proceed without this memo? Do we want new MPUDs only? Basically, anything that hasn't received its first round comments to be answerable to this memo? or do we want all MPUDs up to the point of Board of County Commissioners approval to be applicable to this memo?
Mark, I'd make a comment if you want.
Yeah, if you don't mind. This was a hot button issue for us because we have a lot of projects that have taken quite a while to get through comments, and in some cases, a lot of the comments have been delayed getting to the developers and the home builders. We would like some flexibility here as much as possible. At the very least, a cutoff of the first round of comments, because there have been a lot of projects that have been in the planning for many months and maybe even years, based on the old rules. So we'd like to have some relief given to those projects.
So any MPUDs that have been in with their first round of comments?
I believe that's what we had talked about, was the first round of comments.
And I think that's a fair thing. I think if they would still work with us, great.
Yeah.
The landscaping's pretty easy, so.
That's right.
Hopefully they'll work with us, but I think you're right. They've spent all this time engineering to throw the switch on. It would not be the right thing to do. We haven't done that in the past with other things we've changed in the county, so I don't want to start that now.
Thank you.
Commissioner Starkey.
So we talked about the 10-foot reserved utility easement being reduced to 5. Did we take care of that in this?
I think we've settled that generally speaking. It's not explicit in the memo, but yes, that you could put the utilities under the, or the easements rather, under the sidewalk areas.
All right, because that's another way that we can help achieve the landscaping goals that I think we all want. We were reserving too much and it's not necessary.
All right, so let's say as far as like trying to put a thing, the one thing that's different that I had brought up was that given the flexibility for extra 2 feet from the sides, Commissioner Starkey's voiced very clearly she doesn't like that. What do the other two commissioners think?
If it's up to and there's discretion, if that's what the builder wants to build, then I'm for it. But you know, I'm not opposed. But
Okay.
to mandate it, I'm opposed to that. But if it says up to and they choose to do it, I'm
Okay.
good with that.
Commissioner Oakley?
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same way. Those projects that have been in the portal and been working toward their 40s and other 40s and 50 lot sizes, I don't think I would force them to go into this unless they chose to.
No, he's saying, do you want a wider driveway width? Do you want more concrete?
Oh, it's just on the driveway width?
Just the driveway
More
part at this
concrete in
point.
the
It's an up to.
I'm not necessarily guessing that if it's up to them, so.
Okay. All right, so there's direction there.
I thought you were for more green space.
But are we going to come up with just one-car garages, or we still have 2-car garages?
2 cars.
See, I like a 1-car garage on 30 foot.
I don't, because you got a problem with parking.
Yeah,
If
but
you don't
we're-
have the space, you don't have 2-car garage, you don't have space to park. You got families that got kids that got cars too, so you get a family with 2 teenage kids and they both have cars, you got 4 cars at that place, and 1 garage won't work. So.
I agree.
We're not saying that the
Yeah, we're not gonna change
developers-
it.
Sorry, Chair. We're saying up to 4 feet. It's not saying the developer's going to want to voluntarily go pour more concrete. I can't imagine that they would. I mean.
Yeah, they may not.
But if the homeowner says, hey, I'd like a little bit wider garage because I got.
Driveway.
Yeah, driveway because I have a larger family or a work vehicle. I mean, gives the customer the ability to maybe have a little bit more flexibility in what they want.
Okay.
Y'all do rock, paper, scissors.
Okay, so you got a consensus on the timeline, you got a consensus with that flexibility. If you guys want to look at that ordinance about Hillsborough County, about the oak trees, I think we can look at that because it's not fair to like throw that right at you right now. But it's something that we can consider if we want to bring it back, we can bring it back.
Okay.
But for the rest of it, I think we can go the way we are. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Direction's
Gotta-
clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got to move on to 2 more items. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you. All right, and now, resolution, Andy Taylor.
Do you want to do that after?
We'll do it real quick, and we'll just go right to it. And then we can close out with it.
All right. Andy, I'm going to read the resolution. Resolution number 23-161, a resolution by the Board of County Commissioners of Pasco County, Florida, recognizing Andy Taylor for his 4.5 years of dedicated service to Pasco County and wishing him well on his future endeavors. Whereas Andy Taylor joined Pasco County in February 2019 as the first legislative aide to then Commissioner Mike Moore and continued his service under Commissioner Seth Waitman when he was sworn in November of 2022. And whereas Andy worked closely with Commissioner Moore on funding and planning for universal inclusive playgrounds at Wesley Chapel District Park, Pasco County's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, economic development programs, and countless hours of preparation for each board meeting. And whereas Andy is known for his passionate commitment to working with and promoting Pasco County's tourism as economic development efforts with Pasco County's experienced Florida Sports Coast organization, and has been referred to as the unofficial ambassador of the Florida Sports Coast.
I've got the socks on today, by the way, just so you know.
And I see the pin too, very good.
And whereas Andy worked regularly with the media relations and communications team to share impactful stories with the community and provided content for the county's social media. And whereas Andy's keen eagle eye proofreading skills ensured perfection in reviewing the board meeting agenda and was an asset to the county to ensure no mistakes had been missed. And whereas Andy's insight into county operations and unique perspective on how things function quickly solidified his reputation as a go-to team member, always willing to lend a hand. And whereas Andy stayed with the county last year to work with the newly elected District 2 Commissioner Seth Waitman. Among other successes, Andy and Commissioner Waitman worked with the Pasco County Legislative Delegation and County Government Affairs team to secure a $1.5 million appropriation for much-needed sidewalks near schools. And whereas in August 2023, Andy is leaving Pasco County government to pursue an opportunity outside of public service. He will be missed by commissioners, county team members, organizations, the clerk and controller, and citizens that he has worked closely with over the years. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Pasco County, Florida, that said board hereby recognizes and thanks Andy Taylor for 4.5 years of service to Pasco County and wishes him well on his future endeavors. Done and resolved in regular session with a quorum present and voting the 8th day of August 2023.
Move to approve.
I don't think there needs to be a motion on this.
It does.
Okay, I don't approve.
Yeah.
You signed this.
I wasn't sure if I had the votes, to be honest with you.
He's out of here.
May I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Waitman.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Andy Taylor, you've hit a home run. We have property appraiser Mike Wells here, Senator Fasano from the clerk, and Tim and team, and anybody else I missed?
We
Sheriff's
have
Department.
Chief is here as well.
You know, Andy, Andy and I kind of started in county government together around the same time, some 10 plus years ago with Commissioner Higginbotham down in Hillsborough County. And it's where we both cut our teeth in local government. And before that, Andy worked for a state house member with Speaker Weatherford's office. So we came from up top and worked our way down to the bottom. And it's been a real pleasure to work with you, Andy, over this period of time, to be my partner coming into this new job. And I, for one, thank you for all the service that you've provided to our citizens and businesses of District 2, Pasco County, where you've worked in support roles for probably most everybody in this room here today, celebrating you and wishing you well. So, brother, I can't be more proud of what you're going to be doing and the work that you've done, and I'm proud to call you my friend. So, congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay. Commissioner Stark.
It seems like many more years than, did you say 4.5?
4.5.
It seems like much longer.
The COVID, I was the chairman's aide during COVID. If any of my friends that work for the state are listening to this right now, that should count double for FRS time. So that's why, Commissioner, that's why it feels longer.
I know you're going to be missed, but you and I had a nice conversation the other day, and you're going to be missed in this role, and I don't know what the new role is, and I did appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
It sounds like we'll be interacting a lot,
yes.
So I'm looking forward to that. But and I'm still going to call you for insight, and you are just a gem. So
thank you.
Sorry that you're moving on from us, but I'm glad that you're staying here in the county.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Oakley.
And it does seem like it's been more than 4.5 years you've been here, so you wear on people. I mean, really. But I appreciate everything you've done. I even had Andy one time drive me to Tallahassee. I ended up driving the whole way, and I think he about a block away from the hotel. He said, "You want me to drive on in?" I said, "No, I think I got it now." But it's all been good. He's been a good supporter, and he's been good for the county while he's been here. So we wish you all the luck in the world.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I tell my aide, Katie, I said, go sit next to Andy, go learn from Andy. So thank you for all the help you've have given to my aides. And, just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Andy, you've been a great team member every step of the way. I mean, I think you were the go-to guy. I know Commissioner Moore relied on you quite a bit to do a lot of research, et cetera. And, you helped him get his ideas across to what needed to be done as well. So you're definitely a tremendous asset. I wish you all the best future coming up, and glad to know you're still staying local. So
thank you.
Thank you.
And
Don't we have a little video up here?
oh,
Trouble.
you hid something from me?
Sure did.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Pasco County team members,
Who's that old guy?
coming to you from beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, where we're doing a little bit of business, a little bit of pleasure at the same time. Wish we could have been there for Andy Taylor. Yeah, Andy Taylor extravaganza today as he moves on and climbs up that ladder of success. But Andy, we wanted to obviously wish you well. We know how much you've enjoyed your time at Pasco County. You're beloved by all, you'll be missed by all, and we know you're moving on to great things. But you've been such an asset for the citizens of Pasco County. Again, you'll be dearly missed. We want to wish you all the best in the world. And by the way, it's literally 130 degrees here right now. It's 150 degrees. But it is beautiful, as you can see. There's a little bit of shot of the water. And again, Andy, we love you. We love you dearly. And you were my right-hand man for so long. And you've done a great job for Commissioner Wakeman and the entire team of Pasco County. But again, we wish you nothing but success in your future endeavors. Take care, everybody.
All right, very good.
Oh, it's nice.
So we've got a presentation from the clerk, so let's go down and take a picture. I know you had a big fan club, so all Andy's fan club want to come up, line up there.
So we have, yes.
Commissioners, should we go down or just stay up here?
And Mr. Chairman, if I could say a few words after we're done with the photo, if you want, if you're okay with it.
You want to do it now, or?
Yeah, I can do it now. That's fine. I just wanted to say thank you, Commissioner Waitman. I was going to make a comment and tell a story in the microphone I don't think I've ever told before. But I was the very first legislative aide in Pasco County. I was the first person to hold this job. I was the first one hired for this. And the way that came about that not many people know was in January of 2019, I was sitting at home and I got a text from a friend of mine that I had known for years. And he said, "Hey, the Pasco County Commissioners are hiring aides for the first time. And there's this guy in Wesley Chapel that runs really hard, and I think you're one of maybe 2 or 3 people in the whole world that could keep up with him." And 3 weeks later, I was here. But what you don't know, the person that sent me that text telling me these jobs were open was Commissioner Wakeman. So thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. And I do want to say thank you again to the tax collector and the property appraiser, and there's about 15 more people here specifically for this today. But I know my protocol, so calling out the electeds. We also have the whole Florida Sports Coast office here today, which I deeply appreciate and will miss working with them every day. And with that, I know you got another item, so I'm going to shut up and we'll start taking the photos.
All right,
Thank you.
come on up front. Do you want to go downstairs or no? He's got a lot. Anyone of his fan club, come on up.
If you're an Andy's fan club.
Come on, everyone, come on. Let's get a nice picture for him. Come on, tax collector, property appraiser, Tim, come on up.
We have PFM here. They got to get to Gainesville, so they can't be here at the afternoon. it's going to be more than 10 minutes, maybe 15.
Oh, yeah. Can you hang in like for 5 minutes? Yeah, wait for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Andy, good luck. We're going to move to item R58, investment performance review. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and fellow board members. This is the semi-annual update to the board on the investment portfolio. At the podium, we have Scott Stitcher. He's a director with PFM. And also we have the director of my finance department, Matt Lazar. And they are both going to present to you today. Mr. Stitcher will talk about the market and what's been going on with what's going on in the market, what the themes are, and how it ties to interest rate and the idea of higher for longer. And then Mr. Lazar, he's going to go over the portfolio that my office manages for the Board of County Commissioners, and also the newly created report on investments that we're providing. In addition, then Mr. Stitcher will come back up after Mr. Lazar and talk about the portfolio that they manage for the board as well. So, Mr. Stitcher.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Madam Clerk, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this morning. I'll try and keep my comments brief on the economy here. The Fed and inflation continue to dominate the headlines. The good news is that headline inflation numbers like CPI and PCE have been starting to trend lower. We saw a very favorable PCE reading 2 Fridays ago. We get a CPI reading this week. And again, those are moving in the right direction. From an employment standpoint, the unemployment rate ticked down to 3.5%. Last week, and that gap between the number of jobs available and the number of people looking for jobs continues to narrow, which the Fed is wanting to see. Now, the good news about having an employed consumer is they continue to spend, and they are important in making up the overall growth of the economy. They make up about 2/3 of the growth of the economy. So consumers having jobs and spending money is a good thing. We saw the GDP for the first quarter come in at 2%. The initial reading for 2Q came in surprisingly to the upside at 2.4%. So the consumer continues to be very resilient. From a Fed standpoint, the Fed actually paused during the second quarter. They chose not to raise rates at their June meeting. However, in July, they did raise rates by 25 basis points again. The Fed funds range now stands at 5.25% to 5.5%, a 22-year high. If you believe what the dot plot is telling you, it would say that the Fed might have one more rate hike in them before the year ends, but they've been very transparent in saying they remain very data dependent. So the jury is out on whether we see another rate hike before the year ends. I think what has come out of it, though, is we're going to remain at these higher levels for longer. I think even the markets are starting to realize that. So interest rates have moved up based on the Fed's trajectory, based on the economy remaining very strong, persistent inflation, and again, the market's mindset that we are going to be higher for longer. From a fixed income standpoint, we sort of had a tale of two quarters. The first quarter, we saw what was really a flight to quality based on some volatility in regional banks. And so treasuries outperformed dramatically during the first quarter. The second quarter, the reverse occurred. It was sort of a risk-on mindset, and you saw interest rates rise dramatically over the course of the quarter. So the first quarter was a quarter in which diversification worked against you. The second quarter was a quarter in which diversification was very helpful. And we'll see that when we look at the portfolio here in a moment. I'm going to briefly stop on page 2 to just drive home that point that interest rates did move higher during the quarter. And then I'm going to hand it over to Matt to talk about the county's assets in aggregate. So the solid blue line is a snapshot of the Treasury yield curve at the end of June 30, the dotted light blue at the end of the first quarter. And again, you can see the dramatic move that occurred during the quarter. That's a bad thing for fixed income investors over the short term as interest rates rise, bond prices drop. However, a longer duration portfolio, a longer term fixed income investor will be rewarded in higher income over the long term. So it's not all gloom and doom. It just hurts a little bit right now in the near term. So let me stop there, see if there are any questions on the economy, the fixed income market. If not, I'm going to hand it over to Matt.
I'd say keep moving. Thanks.
Yeah.
Right, perfect, thank you. And if we're still taking votes on oak trees, my vote is for oak trees, so we can do that. So just real quick, what you're seeing on this slide is the overall unrestricted portfolio for the county. Some key items we want to point out just to bring to your attention. In the top left, that chart is the overall allocation, the diversification of the funds that the county, excess funds that the county has invested. Really what we're going to then gravitate towards down on the bottom is you're going to see a mix of the short-term in the green and the long-term investments in blue. And that again represents about 67% of the county's portfolio. So the county portfolio currently stands at $1.8 billion. Represented in front of you here is about $1.2 billion of that. That is the unrestricted investments. One of the big ones we want to point out to kind of tie into what Scott was talking about, the second line in the green box of short-term investments for the Florida Palm Term. That has been our moneymaker for us recently, where we've really been we've been performing a lot of analysis, and we found that working within the Florida Palm Term investments has been key to guaranteeing some of those returns that you guys are all looking to see. So of that $396 million in the next 90 days, we anticipate $7.3 million return on that, and then by May of 24, another $11 million. So overall, just in fixed term alone, $18 million in return, and that's not including any reinvestment of those funds that we would be doing. So again, kind of also if you look, the monthly, the expected yield to maturity is a key indicator. Kind of to Scott's point, if we would have looked at this 2 years ago, we'd be on the lower end, 3 or below. You can see we're sticking at 5 in some of those short term, the unrestricted short term, and even around 4, close to 5 in the long-term investments, and then obviously staying within our portfolio, the investment policy and Florida statute requirements. Any questions before going to the next slide?
No, it looks like you're maximizing. Very good.
All right. There we go. All right, so on here, we just wanted to reiterate for everybody, while there is an investment policy that the county adopted in 2017, which we really started seeing those returns, we are also driven by Florida Statute 218-415, which in the order you see kind of on the slide, we have to maintain safety in the principles, so we're minimizing capital loss. Then it's liquidity. We got to make sure we meet the operational needs of the county. It's the normal operational needs of just, it could be capital projects. We can't have vendors and tell them we have money tied up. So we're just making sure we work closely with the county departments to make sure any project, especially with the restricted debt proceeds, that we are within drawdown schedules, and if we need to, we can move those further out to maximize any potential return, which would be third on the list, which is the yield. So that it is in that order. Obviously, we don't just invest just to say we do it. We'd like to see a return, but obviously in this order, we do make sure we are making safe decisions of county dollars. So on there. In here, before I go into the investment schedule, the other investment schedule that was passed out this morning, this is the sector analysis, which in the gray boxes, the outline, you'll see that is the maximum investment we are allowed per the investment policy. And then filled in blue with the percentage represented next to it, that is the actual where we stand as of June 30th. So you can see we are well within our limits. We are not exceeding any of those. And that is really, we use that in combination. PFM has our policy as well to make sure that we continue to abide by any restrictions that we would have by the investment policy. Before I go into the schedule that we provided, any questions?
No.
No? You guys are like, it's lunchtime. Go faster.
That's right.
Sorry. I know. All right. So in the schedule you provided this morning, really, real briefly, the very first page, that is just a summary of the investment policy. Yep, it is the one. It's entitled Quarterly Investment Summary Report for the quarter ended June 30, 2023. This is a new format that we are going to provide you more detail, give you more information. For those of you who've been around, you used to get an Excel spreadsheet. It was really small. Probably couldn't see it. So now this is giving you a high level. So the first page is really just summarizing Florida statute and the investment policy. Going below in the authorized investments section, that is directly from our investment policy that the county adopted in 2017, showing the minimums and maximums for maturities and investment authority. Continuing through on page 2 will be the kind of a repeat of the slide you see up here. Our goal is to continue to provide that information to you guys. We think it just drives home really any talking points you may have. It shows not only are we're diverse, but we're managing the portfolio appropriately. Next section will be bond proceeds of investment. That is an important section. There's no detail there this time because there was no new debt issued, but we find that to be important to list because if our portfolio took a huge jump to over $2 billion, we want to set realistic expectations that could have been influx of debt proceeds that were received, just to call that out for you guys when you guys are kind of looking through that. Page 3 will be the market overview. That'll be a repeat of what Scott had just gone over. We will present that quarterly as well, just to keep making sure you guys are aware, keeping that on the forefront. The next, probably most important section for some are the quarterly income earned. So in this section, we will document for the quarter ended, and you will see what we have documented today for June 3rd, 2023 is $2.9 million in the last quarter. We are expecting, like I said, in the next 90 days, another guarantee of $7.3 million just in the Florida Palm term investments, and then really by the end of May 24, another 11 million, just in that one item that we were kind of looking at earlier. Kind of to bring to your attention, overall for the fiscal year, we are about $30 million in income earned, which it brings us back to, we would say, pre-COVID times. So when we had first adopted the policy, we saw a large increase. Obviously, it gave us more freedom to invest. And so we were at about 30 million, with 17 million of that being for unrestricted investments. The rest is related to restricted debt service. Questions?
What year was that? Your pre-COVID number, what year was that?
So 2017 is when we adopted the policy, so 2018 it would have been.
You saw previously as
these numbers,
okay.
Yeah, we would have been in line
So
with
2018.
18.
All right. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? No.
Good.
Makes it easier for me. All right, so then below that will be the investment activity. That is, again, just summarizing what has occurred in the last quarter. That's just hitting home what I just talked about before. 67%, 1.2 billion of our portfolio currently stands within unrestricted investments, with the remaining 600 million being restricted for debt service or the capital projects that are associated with that. So we set up different investment accounts for all debt service. Obviously, makes it easier to manage. It makes it easier for arbitrage compliance as well when we're reporting those calculations. Alrighty. This next part will go a little bit quicker. So here you'll see we have represented a few schedules for you guys. The first schedule is a summary of what you would probably see in the annual comprehensive financial report, the ACFR. It's just summarizing the different investment types. And then for our PFM unrestricted, as well as our Florida Trust short-term bond fund, we go into a little more detail because there's a little more investment strategy driven. Obviously, with PFM that being investment advisors, the Florida Trust short-term bond fund also follows a similar format when investing any funds that we would have put into those accounts. Then the good part is that is our longest schedule, so that takes us all the way to page 11. So we're almost there. On page 11 is the distribution of the cash and investments for the county. That again is kind of just showing overall what the county's portfolio looks like as we kind of go through the different diversification of investment. Again, just putting in another format for you guys to see. Schedule 3 is the cash flow for the county, and within the cash flow of the county, you will see we are trending in a similar direction that we would anticipate. We are still trending to be higher than prior year ending balance of $1.2 billion. You'll see when you're kind of looking through the fluctuations in cash flow, most out the door expenses are going to occur September, October. It's the end of our fiscal year. Also, debt service payments are usually coming out during that time, so that's going to be important to keep in mind. April is another one, another part of our debt service payment, and then you'll see that big increase when the tax revenue comes in December. So just kind of as you see the ebbs and flows that the county kind of goes through cash flow, we are showing its normal processes, normal business operations for the county so far. So, all right. Anything so far? No.
Just glad to see we're not investing in the New Jersey,
there you go, Turnpike.
whatever, the
Turnpike.
and
Heard you loud and clear on that
California,
one.
anything.
No, you're not anymore. So, going through, just kind of wrap up before I hand it back over to Scott real quick. We've heard through a few of the meetings that we've attended, understanding more of how does all these pooled investments, how does that affect the overall funds of all the counties? So we kind of have done a breakdown in Schedule 4. So the overall cash equivalents of $1.2 billion, it's not in just one place. So we do allocate that based on the funds that the county uses to do normal operations. So the general fund, probably the number one priority for many, is of that $1.2 billion accounts for about $209 million of that equity. And then you can kind of see we kind of listed throughout. Capital projects funds would be really the highest at $417 million, but you got to keep in mind that's all the impact fee revenues that are going there, so they are going to get a bigger portion of excess funds that may be invested. And then again, just giving you a chart to kind of look at. If you like pictures better, we did that as well. And then the last schedule that for you guys is again just reaffirming our investment strategy. We are sticking within the 0 to 12 month range. Obviously, that has been where we are maximizing returns. Obviously still third, but we do want to keep it in that range, and we're continuing to work with PFM and really all our investment partners just to kind of make sure. PFM's always given us great advice, and we've had great discussions, and it's really helped lead us into discussions with our other investment partners to make sure we're following suit. And we may see some of this gravitate in the coming periods, but right now, really 0 to 12 months is where we stand for overall investments.
Okay.
So.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
So, and if there's any additional information you would like to see in the report, we'll be happy to include it. This was just us to provide additional information about the portfolio and the investments and the activity.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I'll try and put a bow on this and do this pretty quickly. I'm going to start on page 9, and I'm breaking out basically one line item from page 4 that Matt went over, and that's the portion of the unrestricted cash that we're responsible for, longer duration portfolio. As you can see on this page, we ended the quarter at $381,694,000. We've taken a defensive stance in this portfolio, and you can see that based on the duration number we show you there versus the benchmark, 1.71 years versus 1.74 years. Duration is a measure of the interest rate sensitivity of your portfolio. So if you think interest rates are going higher, you want to be a little more defensive in the portfolio, and that's what the stance we've taken. I want to point you to the yield at cost number, 2.88%. That's basically what you would earn today if you held the portfolio until maturity, as opposed to that yield at market number. If you were hypothetically to go out and recreate your portfolio, which again would be challenging, but if you were to recreate your portfolio today, you would earn a 4.76%. So the good news is that yield at cost number continues to creep up, thanks in large part to maturities that are occurring, interest that is occurring in the portfolio being reinvested at higher yields. So today, the portfolio actually stands at a 3.12%, and it's going to continue to rise with time. And the beauty of that is you're locking in that yield for longer than, say, like a money market fund, which resets much, much quicker. So that near-term pain that I talked about earlier, you're being rewarded in a higher yield at cost over the long term. That serves as an insurance policy, really, to the county. We talked about being diversified. The upper right-hand corner shows you the sector allocation. It is a high credit quality portfolio, AA on average. You see that in the lower left-hand corner. And then that duration distribution. How do we get to that 1.71 years? Your portfolio is represented in blue. And the thing to note there is you have an overweight in the 0 to 1 year space. That's money that will be coming due that can be invested in higher yields. So we were seeing 5.29, 5.47.
And if you could, we're gonna need to wrap it up. You've
Okay.
done a phenomenal job.
Well,
So happy to,
Thank
happy to see the high yields, and you capitalize on that
Yes.
short-term numbers that are boosting up to carry us on, so
That's
I think
right.
you're doing great.
Great.
Thank you.
Then I'll just finish on the performance page where we did outperform during the quarter. We've outperformed for the year.
Great.
You know, and that's net of fees. So we want to give back less than the market. We've accomplished that. And numbers have actually turned positive for the trailing 12 months. We think income is going to continue to increase over the next 12 months. I feel like you're in a good spot.
Feels real good.
Thank
Compared to
you.
those numbers of, we saw were like .012 for many,
Yeah.
many years, so I appreciate you taking advantage of the opportunities out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a
All right,
good
we're adjourned
lunch.
till 1:30.
and other aquatic animals. Storm drains are meant for clean rainwater. Most other inspect and illicit Pasco County Department of Public Works at 727-834